Hello everyone, Bob Main from Bob's Bullet Points, a subsidiary of Handgun World podcast. So I want to talk a little bit about simplifying your concealed carry firearms. I did a episode just recently on my audio podcast, Handgun World podcast, about this subject, but I kind of left off some of what I wanted to talk about, so I'm making this video. If you don't listen, by the way, please subscribe. Check it out. Twice a month I put out Handgun World podcast, a good audio podcast for you to listen to. So what do I mean by that? Simplifying and standardizing. A lot of people own a lot of guns, and that's okay. A lot of different types of guns is what I mean. They'll have striker-fired guns, they'll have hammered-fired guns, they'll have hammered-fired guns with a thumb safety like a 1911 style pistol. They'll have double action, single action, hammer fired guns, some hammer fired guns with a slide mounted safety. Sometimes they'll have revolvers, sometimes they'll have, different types of configurations of firearms. And they carry a lot of different types all the time. Matter of fact, I hear about people switching out every 2 or 3 days to a different kind of gun. I'm not a big fan of that, and I'll tell you why. Because there's two major reasons. The first reason, obviously, everybody knows, ease of operation, simplistic of operation, and also knowing how to operate your gun. If you're shooting a 1911, fine. If you're shooting a Beretta, fine. A Glock, M&P, Springfield XD, fine. If that's what you're carrying to bet your life on, good. Train with it and be consistent with it. In a high-stress situation like a civilian defensive gun use, it's my personal belief that being able to respond under a high level of stress, like your life being threatened, is very important. For example, if a Glock 19, if this is your major carry gun, then perhaps a Glock 43 would also be a smart choice. Why? Because these guns are very similar to each other. They operate similar, they feel similar. The manual of arms, the magazine release, the slide release, if you use it, they're all very similar. The triggers are very similar. Same with if you've got an M&P, have an M&P shield. If you've got a SIG P320, perhaps a P365, because it's so similar. If you got a Walther PPQ, for example, how about maybe like having a Walther PPS? So you have guns that are similar to each other. If you have a 1911, a smaller 1911, if you can get one that's reliable and it works for you, which can sometimes be a problem with small 1911s, like the 3-inch versions. But if you can get one, if you have one, you can make it work, do that. Because you're probably going to do the same thing all the time that you've trained yourself to do. Nothing wrong with having a collection in your gun safe of tons of different types of guns, going to the range, having fun with it, all kinds of fun shooting. And competition shooters, of course, if you're a big competition shooter, you probably like to have different types of guns because it's a challenge. And you can get classified with different types of guns and things like that. I'm talking about what are you going to put into your waist, on your body, and carry and bet your life on every single day. I'm a strong believer in standardizing for that reason. The other is parts, magazines, recoil spring assemblies. Stock up on those. Recoil springs have to be changed out a lot, especially on smaller guns, and it's something you should pay attention to if you're going to carry a gun on a daily basis, because that can be a failure point, especially if you're going to train with that gun a lot. And magazines. I recommend having 6 magazines at least, and I kind of like 7 or 8 magazines for each gun that I'm going to carry. So if you're carrying the same type of gun all the time, every time, like for example, I'll go back to this Glock 19. If something like this is your primary carry gun, make sure you got 6 to 8 magazines for this Glock 19 and have 3 or 4 of them as training mags and another 3 or 4 as practice mags and training. 3 or 4 carry mags and 3 or 4 practice and training mags. The practice and training magazines, they get beat up a lot. I would not want to bet my life on something that I have been beating up at the range. I'd rather have a nice, clean, fresh, tested magazine that I'm going to actually be carrying. So you can take advantage of the economics of bulk buying ammunition as well, and magazines. Ammunition, if you stick to the same caliber as well, not just the same type of gun, but the same caliber. If it's 9mm or 40, 45, whatever, You can buy large amounts of the same caliber and train with your carry gun, and also concealed carry ammo, which still isn't all that cheap. You can stock up on that. I just recently bought 200 rounds of Federal HST, 124 grain 9mm, because that's one of my favorite carry loads. Well, if I had different types of guns, if I was carrying a 9 one day and then 2 days later carrying a 40 and then carrying a 45 another day and a 357 Magnum the other day, that's not economical for me to be stocking up on that kind of training ammo and also to be stocking up on all that concealed carry ammo. So those are the major reasons I'm a big fan of simplifying your carry gear, standardizing your carry gear, mainly for those two reasons alone. I'm Bob Mayne. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Bob's Bullet Points, kind of a video version of Handgun World podcast. If you like this, please subscribe to this channel. Remember, every the 1st and 15th of every month, I put out Handgun World Podcast audio podcast. I'd love to have you as a listener and a supporter and a subscriber over there. There's lots of different ways to support the efforts that I put out on my audio podcast and also here on YouTube. Thank you very much.